Welcome to week 6 of MPAI 600 here at Georgetown University. I just want to say the only announcement, your paper or presentation is due now, yesterday, tonight, depending on whenever you're watching this. So I look forward to reading those. I'll have those back to you by this time next week. So review of week 5, again, the questions that come up, whether lone wolves or kind of the post 9/11 case studies, or whether we talked about Capitol Hill when we did the presentation on Monday, when does radicalization get monitored further? What happens when is the fire break that says, okay, this person goes on a list that deserves further scrutiny? When I passively surf right-wing or Islamic extremist websites, when I participate in a pro-Islamic website or a demonstration. I mean, there's thousands of those demonstrations going on now, so there'd be millions of people on those on lists. When do I get further scrutinized, and when does that violate kind of people's free speech? And we don't live in China, we don't live in Russia. People are allowed to say and think all sorts of things in our country. Without worrying about being put on a list, which, again, is what we kind of associate with authoritarian countries. So when does it get further scrutiny? When is it free speech? When should I have far more scrutiny is questions that I want you to ask and kind of answer in your future papers. The other point is, what do we do for people on the radar of law enforcement? Many of the case studies that you saw were people on the radar. The Orlando shooter was known, the Boston Marathon, the Fort Hood shooter. They were on the radar of law enforcement in one form or another, but we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't detain or arrest. How do we solve that gap where they're on the radar of law enforcement? And many of you talked about using intelligence and open source to gather information, or community-based measures. Those are all fine and dandy, but they're on the radar, but there's not enough to arrest or detain. What do we do in that gap? Whether that's mental health interventions, whether that's gun control, whether that's, give me some recommendations. Do you have the appropriate funding and structures to deal with the cases that you mentioned? Again, many of you mentioned we need to turn into open source. We need to use other community-based interventions. Those are expensive. We're already spending a lot of money on the national security state. So just keep that in mind going forward. And the one thing I didn't put up there is laws that need to be changed. If you're briefing before Congress, there are limitations on domestic surveillance. What laws need to be changed so you could be a little bit more intrusive, but without violating someone's Fourth Amendment search and seizure constitutional rights. So again, things to think about in your papers and finals. And then finally, no one said this, but should we just accept that we have low-level lone wolves, that we're going to have school shootings, that we're going to have this low-level terrorist attack? That in a free state that, to be honest, kind of fetishizes gun ownership to an extent, should we just accept that we have mass shootings? That's just part of our life. It's a novel theory, but it's not necessarily an incorrect theory. And again, the chances of you being impacted by terrorism or mass shooting are minuscule. So maybe we should just kind of accept that. I'll let you decide. So week 6, again, we're moving to criminal intelligence, and you have the Lemieux lecture. Just a couple of points to go through. It's CompStat, which is, well, let me back up. As you're thinking through this, think of why we had such a decline in crime throughout the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. Only now are we seeing kind of that back increase in crime. Why? Why did we have that decline in crime? Some people have said it's CompStat or better policing. CompStat was a method of accountability for criminal behavior, or for policing in certain areas that measured criminal behavior. Others have brought up other issues, that it's just economics, that demographics, that people aged out of the crime wave time frame, particularly the baby boomers. Better societal care for mental health and for people who are on the bottom of the socioeconomic status. People have said that's led to the decline in crime. Mass incarceration is another theory. There are many theories out there. I want you to start thinking through what you think led to it, and what I don't have in the readings is what led to the increase in crime that we've seen in the last couple of years. And then I want you to talk about law enforcement technologies. You'll see the Boston Marathon documentary on how they caught the Boston Marathon. But as you're watching that, I want you to think, okay, you can surge those resources for something as a high profile like the Boston Marathon or other incidents, but how do we employ CCTV and artificial intelligence to deal with day-to-day crime? Can we use AI and CCTV and others to deal with day-to-day crime? And can we actually employ that in a larger scale, or to scale, I should say? So I'll let you decide. Again, things to think about as you're going through this week. So if there's questions or issues, please let me know. And I look forward to seeing your papers this week. And yeah, please let me know if there's any issues.